I got interviewed by my local IGDA chapter about my journey from being an English teacher to being an indie game developer. In the following interview, I talk about just teaching summer camps and English classes into actually making and releasing 4 games on Steam. I talk about my process for indie art style and why being a solo or small team gives you a lot of strengths that larger studios don't have in terms of art style and game genre. Right now I'm working on this tennis roguelike called Torso Tennis that you see right here. So I talk a lot about how I went from the ideation phase of this game, from making it during Global Game Jam in one weekend, and then taking it forward over the next year with a demo on Steam, iterating and making the game better and better. So I hope you enjoy the full interview. I think there's a lot of nice little nuggets of knowledge that you can use and apply to your own creative practice.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benjamin Albert. I am the treasurer of the Central Virginia IGDA. I am also a game developer. I made a game called Lumina Rush. Past November is my first official game. And I've also made some YouTube content under the guise of a studio called Battered Loot Studio. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about a developer that is far better than me, has better hair than me, and is wonderful. I take a lot of inspiration, and I've learned a lot from him. Michael Made.
I appreciate the hair compliment. It takes a lot of work. I cut it myself, actually, this past weekend. Anyways, I'll introduce myself briefly. My name's Michael. I am also a game developer. We'll talk about this more, but I kind of found my way into making games by teaching kids how to make games. And then I just kind of started working on indie stuff on my own. I've released a couple games, puzzle games on Steam. I have a couple unfinished games that have demos on Steam. I also run an indies group in North Carolina. Oh yeah, I'm not based in Virginia, but I run a group here.
Close.
Yeah, close enough, right? I run a group here called Triangle Interactive Arts Collective. It's a group of indies. We do events, some of the stuff that I was just talking about. We have a shared co-working space, which I'm in right now. And yeah, I'm working on 2 games right now. One is called Forklift Flower Pot, which is kind of an exploration game inspired by Outer Wilds, where you change seasons on a weird planet and kind of discover what plants do in the different seasons. And I'm also working on a tennis roguelike called Torso Tennis.
Check out Torso Tennis because there's a demo. I was actually playing it right before this, and I was getting my butt whooped. I got pretty far, though. I was really proud of myself. And then Forklift Flower Pot. And you also have some other games. But before we jump into that, how did you get started? You got a lot of games under your belt. I was also digging into your itch archives. What have you made?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really good way of seeing what has this person dabbled with and exposed to the world.
It's true.
But how did you get started just making games or just dabbling in it?
Yep. So like I said, I didn't really study game development or anything. I studied psychology in school. I got a job teaching as quickly as I could after school, so I was teaching after school English classes. I eventually got kind of hired to do summer camp teaching kids Minecraft modding, and I knew a little bit of programming. Yeah. So that was kind of my entry into. I took one computer science class my final semester of school, and I didn't really click with it right away. I never really thought that making games was something I could do because my brother programmed. He was older than me. He's very smart. He was always he's in the chess club, very smart, won some math competitions. And I was, I don't know. I felt like it wasn't something for me, so I just didn't really explore it. But then it was my job, right? All of a sudden, now I had to teach kids light programming, mostly copy, paste, edit strings, edit things, type parameters into functions kind of stuff. And that was kind of the beginning for me. So after that, the company, I busted my butt, teaching these kids over the summer. And I guess the people that ran the company, Youth Digital, was a local company here in Durham. They hired me on to start teaching some of their online courses. So at that point, that's where the magic happened for me, because it was in my job to learn the game development, different facets of it, and teach courses on it. So I would just kind of the way it would go is that we would do kind of months of kind of research and prep and putting together a sample project, and then we would kind of record videos teaching kids how to build that sample project step by step. So I kind of got a low pressure way to learn the basics, and not a really high pressure environment where I had to perform right away.
Yeah.
I could just kind of take my time and figure it out and talk to industry experts and see how they would do things, yeah, that was kind
That's
of,
really cool.
that was
It's
the
like
beginning. Yeah.
starting off teaching kind of like game development when you are also learning in the same time seems like a just, and it's also just a fun time with like planning stuff for kids to learn. And honestly, learning by teaching seems pretty reinforced well too, which makes a lot of sense with a lot of your skills, makes a lot of with how you have done stuff. And we'll eventually get to your streaming, but it seems like you're a good teacher at the end of the
Thanks.
day.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, I feel like it was something I felt like I was good at right away, and I quite liked teaching. I liked especially the age group, like middle school around, were the ones that were like really into Minecraft and kind of had some ability to learn some programming. I felt like I could be a goofball, and it didn't matter if I got everything perfect. So
Yeah.
that was really good. It was, like I said, it was low pressure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then how did that transition from kind of like teaching to like then making your own stuff?
Yeah, so I remember very specifically we were hiring a contractor to work on our Unity project. We were doing like, okay, we've taught Minecraft modding for so long, now let's actually teach a real game engine with one of our courses. So I started learning Unity for that. And we hired on some people, and like one of the contractors we were going to work with to help build the sample project was like, hey, well, like I can't work this weekend because that's when Ludum Dare is, and so that's how we found out about game jams, right? And so I was like, whoa, once you
Yes.
start learning about that, it's kind of opens a little thing in your mind. It's like, oh, I could do this
Opens the door.
just one weekend. Oh, people make games in one weekend. I could maybe
You're
try
like,
that,
all
right?
Like a year? No.
Yeah.
A weekend of no sleep? No, just kidding.
Exactly.
We can pull that off.
Right. So I wasn't confident enough to jump into it, but at that point, kind of the seed was in my mind, like, oh, I've been learning a lot here teaching kids. Like, I could probably do one of these at some point. But yeah, so then I started kind of like practice a little bit more outside of work, basically, of trying to make stuff on my own. Really, at the beginning stage, is kind of failing, like trying to make stuff that's too big scope. Like everyone has this experience when they start. Like the kind of things that inspire you as a game developer are big, expansive, cool. The mechanics are multi-layered, and there's so many interesting systems that interlock in cool ways.
What was your first like game that you wanted to be like when you like started? And then like for me, it was very visceral. I tried to make Dark Souls. And I got punished for that.
What
Did you have one that you were like,
Undertale honestly was probably the biggest inspiration around that same time. That came out and really, because it's so honest in its presentation in terms of, it's just, it doesn't care about taking itself too seriously. The graphics are goofy, the music is soulful, the characters are so lovable, right? And so seeing that, I just kind of made like little games where you walk around and talk to characters, and there's cool music and whatever. But in terms of like,
made you like appreciate Undertale like a lot more too, where you're like, oh wow, like this seems like anyone can pull it off, but it's like no.
Yeah,
there's a lot of skill.
Exactly. You realize the scope of that game is actually quite big. It's not like something you can just pull off really easily. Make these charming characters that are easy to draw you into the world, right? So yeah, I think so. That was seeing that, and then just trying to make stuff for a while, and then eventually trying some game jams. And eventually I left that company where I was doing the teaching, and I was like, okay, I can probably try to get contract work and stuff, and really make a stab at the indie development thing. And it was a good learning phase for me, because I realized I wasn't really focused enough to finish projects. I also just kind of like had to scramble to really get some contracts. I was really pushing hard to try to learn enough to be, because I thought I was at a level where I was a professional programmer, and I don't think I was quite there yet, judging from how the some of my interviews went and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
but
tough.
Yeah, so
it's a tough industry. Like, land.
And I think my focus was very split too. Like I couldn't decide whether I wanted to work a job at a studio or be like solo small team indie. So at that point I was still like trying to figure it out, and I did get lucky enough to land a few contracts. Notably, I worked on like a small mobile game. I worked on I did some English teaching again for online, and that was a good way to just kind of keep things going while I was still learning and really investing in this process of trying to make games myself. Did a bunch of game jams all the time. Yeah.
To not put it lightly, I think getting contracts for like to make games still very impressive in my opinion. To just be able to be like, all right, someone's gonna pay me to do something to like as a part of a game. That's still an achievement in my opinion. But I totally get it where it's like you're like, I want more like like a career rather than like a part-time.
I mean, those bills need to be paid, so
bills do need to be paid 100%. And contract work sometimes doesn't pay that much. Most of the times it doesn't. So
yeah. It's a real like snowball type thing, right, with the contracts, because it's like getting that first one is so important. And I got lucky that it was a guy that worked at Youth Digital, which was the video making company that I was at. Before I was there, he worked there, and so I kind of got to leverage that trust. And he was just looking for someone to fix the bugs in the game before they launched it. So it was a very light touch, thing to get on my portfolio. And then that I could kind of pass forward to the next contract. Hey, look, I was a programmer on this game. Then I was able to kind of leverage my way into a longer term contract at Volvo doing Unity development for them. So that's in Greensboro, North Carolina. Nice. Yeah. I was doing kind of like XR projects, stuff like that. But yeah, that was kind of the beginning for me. This is a long and meandering story. I think I should probably figure out how to. I'll try to summarize it up a little bit quicker for the people in the chat. But if anything I've said, you have any questions about what I've said, I'm happy to circle back on something.
Absolutely.
So basically I was like, okay, tell us more about Volvo. Just kidding. The indie, trying to do indie and contract at that point was just not working for me. So I kind of had to look for this more full-time stuff. So I worked at Volvo. Then I got a really lucky break. Actually, one of my former colleagues was working at Unity, and they were looking for someone to join the education team there that had experience teaching Unity and had experience with the automotive industry, because they were looking for someone to lead the automotive thing. Learning pathways. Awesome. So that led into getting a job there, which obviously was just the huge step up for me. I was able to save up a lot of money. I was able to make a lot of professional connections. I was able to learn more Unity skills and stuff like that. So I stayed there for quite a few years. I think like 3.5 years. Nice. Before making the leap to do indie stuff again. And this time I had a lot more stuff lined up. If I needed contract work, I had a lot more connections. Whatever, things went a lot more smoothly.
You're able to like jump and then like go work on your stuff, and then be able to be like backpedal into contract work when you need it, I guess.
Yep. So that's kind of how I ended up now doing what I'm doing, where I've do some contracts on games. I've done some contracts teaching. It's very flexible, kind of trying to figure out here's a contract that comes up for 3 months. Let me just put my games down for a few months and work on that. I've got a few months free. Let's try to finish up this project, stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I told you I would talk about each of the questions you sent me for 30 minutes, okay?
You did? And no, honestly, I love the like whole journey, because I've always been curious about like, all right, Michael's like doing this. Like Michael's doing the indie game stuff, and he has some experience before. And it's really interesting being like, all right, you teach, you got some connections, you did some contract work, got more connections, and then you're able to kind of make really cool stuff. And I think that's really like enlightening, because everyone has their own path. There's no one path to doing this. So it's really cool hearing that, in my opinion. But jumping off that, your first ever Steam game, how was that? Because I noticed It's not torso tennis.
Yeah.
You're not like me. This isn't going to be your first one. This is like your third or fourth official game. So how was that go? How'd that go?
Yeah, so that kind of grew out of a jam project. I worked with John on this game called Snailboat for the first ever GMTK jam in 2017. So we started this project. It took about 3 years to make a very short narrative puzzle thing, because it's your first game project and it's like two people. Like he had some stuff come up, I had some stuff come up. We put the game on pause for a while, you come back to it. But Machine's Garden is a very simple puzzle game. It's a hexagonal grid. You try to cover up all the grid spaces, and there's certain special hexes that like either launch the hex to other ones or multiply it or block it in certain ways. Here it is. There's kind of a little narrative that goes along with it too. So this was
even got cutscenes in this game.
Yeah, well, the thing about that cutscene is like it's the one cutscene that's at the very end of the game. So
but hey, you milk that.
There was literally someone on some obscure forum somewhere that was like, "Oh, that looks pretty cool. I purchased for the Planet Killer cutscene at the beginning." It looks like it creates this moment of tension where the laser might shoot. So will it blow up the planet? You might find out if you play this. We eventually wrapped it up during the pandemic. Did a simultaneous launch on both Steam for Windows, PC, Mac, and then iOS and Android. And I can talk a little bit more about that. I wouldn't recommend doing a simultaneous launch if you're indie. Use both of those as separate marketing beats. Yeah.
I think there was a lot of people being like, when I was first releasing my game, being like, "Oh, are you going to release it on all these other platforms?" And I'm like, I'm just going to worry about this one thing called Steam.
It's smart.
Right now. And this is all. It's also funny because I was doing some more research, and this was a game featured in an article in Kotaku. I think, or something like that. I'm like, respect, because I know marketing is a pain, and like sending out your game to like a million platforms and hoping that someone like covers it is a whole thing.
Yes,
but it's awesome. That's awesome that you got it.
So this was my first stab at game marketing, and I read some book about it where it was like, send emails to the press, and like that's.
And you're like, who's the press?
Yeah, exactly. So I tried. We got covered by a few outlets, but it doesn't really drive purchasing of games. I feel like we didn't really have a strong hook with the game. It was just kind of like, I thought The Witness was really cool. We both had a fun time working on Snailboat, which was our jam game. That was a puzzle game. So let's make another puzzle game, and they're very hard to find an audience. The way that puzzle games you can find an audience with them is if you have a very strong gameplay hook. Stuff like Baba Is You, if you think about that, it's just like the hook of changing the rules of the puzzle game is so cool. So yeah, you do have to pay $100 for the Steam Direct fee for any new Steam page, and that gives you a demo page as well if you want one for that game. I'm answering the question, and the demos are really awesome. I think it's a really good thing, to get your demo up in the modern era of indie games.
Going from that, I want to jump into talking about Triangle. Triangle Interactive, just because you talked about game jams, and I think a decent amount of them came from at least Triangle. And it's really funny because I started playing this video, and this is you.
That's my voice.
This is you narrating this video, which is awesome. So if you want to talk about it, that'd be great.
Yep. So basically in 2020, in March, I went to my first big game convention, which was PAX East, and I met a bunch of people that were from New York City that were in this collective called Gumbo, where they have a co-working space. They were all helping each other out at the booth. They were all sharing a big Airbnb that I got to stay in, and I was just like, this is so cool. Here I've been just kind of making indie games kind of by myself and occasionally with my friends. March 2020, right before the storm, me and Kirk were there together, and we were just like, we need something like this in North Carolina. There's enough studios in the area where I'm sure there's tons of indies that would want to come out and kind of support each other. Because Epic is the big studio here, right? And the way it typically goes is if an indie studio breaks off from Epic, they have all of their friends already. They already kind of feel supported by each other. but I think that they have something to give to a larger community that like people that are just kind of curious about game development have no way of kind of getting that knowledge or interacting with people unless there's sort of open communities that provide that.
Yeah, no, and Triangle, yeah, I've seen so many people jump in, or at least the people, the times that I've been, which is probably like 4 or 5 times. There's just a wealth of knowledge, and then also new people just trying out stuff, and it's really cool mix. Very similar to RVA game jams in some ways. Yeah, Triangle is just a really really cool place. And that's awesome that you kind of just like were like, hey, there's this need for this, and let's try to make this happen.
So obviously we didn't start it right away in March 2020. We
yeah.
we waited until about like a year and a half after that, when the vaccines were out, and we started to feel a little bit more comfortable about kind of co-working. So we then just started kind of running co-working events where people would just kind of show each other what you're working on. I really wanted to focus on events that focus on like the creative practice in the beginning, because we have groups like the IGDA here that are good sources of professional networking. But what I saw that we kind of did maybe a little differently was trying to focus on the indie side of it, really, and provide a place for people if they want playtesting on their game, that they can bring it to our playtest night. If they just want a little feedback on something, have the events like where it's normalized that you just kind of have a laptop out and you show people what you're working on. And so that kind of worked holistically with the other events that were already kind of happening in the area.
And you also have what I think is really unique is like a co-working space, which is kind of a really great way to kind of keep you kind of pushing, being in a space that is other people are doing stuff, keeps you motivated, gets to be able to check on other people working on stuff, and you just build a community.
Yeah, there's so many little micro moments of both like professional progress, yes, like if someone's like, oh yeah, you can just do this little shortcut or whatever, they help you with that, but also just kind of like feeling good about what you're doing. I think making games can be very isolating. Any kind of work on a computer for 8 hours a day is kind of inherently isolating, right? So it's important to surround yourself with people. At least for me, it's like very important to be around people at least a few times a week. So
and to get out of your head and to like just be like, hey, can you look at this? And like, am I crazy? Am I on the right track? Or hey, you're making this. This is really cool. I may be stuck on my thing for a while, but if I can help you, I'll like get the ball rolling again or something like that.
Yeah. I will say, like, starting a co-working space was a huge amount of effort. And I don't know that I'd like super recommend it to anyone unless they're like extremely passionate about it. We barely break even on the space. It's kind of, sometimes like we had a few studios that were kind of contributing to our rent, that they kind of are starting to run out of money because the industry is, very tough. And so then all of a sudden, like, oh, we need to fill like 3 desks this month. What are we going to do? So it's stuff like that is definitely a stress for a volunteer run organization. But the big thing that I think helped us, that we were able to kind of even get to the point where we were breaking even on something like this, was just running events for years, just being very consistent about like every Thursday we're in this building. Before we had the office space, we were kind of meeting out where they had the kind of a public space. Once a month we were doing those playtest nights, and it started to really grow the community of people that were interested in something like this.
That's awesome. And having events, going to events kind of just builds up that connection or network. And if I saw Jeff at one point, but thank you for saying that co-working spaces are hard to, make, because Jeff at one point really wanted to make one, and we tried to convince him no. So yeah, that's really good to know. But jumping from that, Triangle does a lot of events, and a lot of them are game jams, which is sweet. I've gone to a few of your game jam showcases. I played some really good games there, but one of the games that came from one of them is Torso Tennis that you're currently working on right now. That was, I believe, for last year's Global Game Jam.
2024 Global Game Jam.
That started, right? 2024 Global Game Jam. How was that? And how did that kind of start / come to be?
Yeah, so basically, the way that games tend to go for me is like towards the end of the development of one of them is like I start having an idea for the next one that becomes very appealing and like I think about it probably too much and it's very tempting to just start working on it. So game jams are a good way to kind of like either get that out of your head and like, okay, it's actually a shit idea, like I shouldn't work on that, right? Or like or the alternative, which is kind of what happened with torso tennis. I had this idea for, I was really inspired by kit bashing with like 3D miniatures. So like you take the tentacle from one miniature and you put it onto a soldier, and now all of a sudden it's a soldier with a tentacle. I just thought that was kind of cool, and like I liked the aspect of putting things together like that. So I wanted to make a sports game where you did that, where it was a roguelike where you're buying limbs from a shop and stealing them from your opponents when you beat them. So, and then I was like, okay, well, like, let's just, I'm thinking about this too much now. I've kind of I got Forklift Flower Pot, my exploration game. I got it to a demo and I felt pretty good at that milestone. Like once you have a demo out, people can play it. The game kind of like doesn't market itself, but you can kind of like leave it for a bit and cook on it.
It can like live and breathe.
Yeah. So I felt like that was at an appropriate milestone. Like, okay, let's try to give myself a week to do this jam and see. Let's try to do the sports game and do a small scope sport, like maybe like tennis. So yeah, I made it in Global Game Jam, and actually like it wasn't really great in the beginning. I still don't. Every once in a while, someone comes along that really gets it, and I'm like, okay, this game is good. When I have someone play test it. I put analytics in the game, and I did see that someone actually played it like 20 hours every one weekend recently. So I was like, okay,
wow.
I'm like the demo, I'm like that's kind of cool. So I don't know, like every once in a while, some people get it and really like it, but in the beginning, especially after Global Game Jam, it didn't necessarily show the promise where I was like, I should work on this, but I still felt like I didn't scratch the itch of the idea. So I decided to put Forklift Flower Pot on hold for a bit to work on Torso Tennis because I thought I could get it out in 6 months before I had a contract lined up in July. So
okay, that makes
that was the initial thing, and like I did. So I followed my my timeline pretty well. I hit the Endless Replayability Fest on Steam. I hit the next fest on Steam in June. And then I was like, okay, let's not launch. I was like, I want to do a couple more updates to this. I feel like there's a little more potential here. It's a slippery slope, this kind of thought. It's
tough. It's tough to like wrap the bow on a game. I feel like it's one of the hardest things to do, and especially for like a roguelike. I feel like one a roguelike for a game jam is awesome, but also crazy ambitious because it feels like it's tough to tackle, but at least once you tackle it, you have an idea of like, all right, these are kind of like the hurdles you kind of have to kind of conquer in a lot of ways, and then being able to understand those problems. I imagine going from, all right, we've solved this for a game jam, now let's solve this for an entire game that's like two different monsters to try to like take down.
Well, the cool thing about roguelikes, and I had never experienced this before with any of the long-term projects I worked on, is that they're just playable from the beginning. Like you could play the full season of Torso Tennis from the first week that it was out in Global Game Jam, right? So it's just an iteration. It's a constant iteration from week one, which has been so rewarding because you just play test, you see what's wrong, you see what could be better, you come up with some ideas, you put it in the game, you kind of respond to that feedback, and I think that's also part of why I've decided to kind of extend the development longer, because I'm just having a lot of fun with it. And I do think more of the potential of the game has been coming out for sure, especially over the last couple months since MagFest.
Oh yeah.
I've been feeling like the game's in a much better place, and a lot of the marketing efforts and the promotional videos that I've been making have been starting to pick up a bit more, which is good.
That's awesome. And I think like your tutorialization of stuff has gotten a lot better in my opinion. I remember playing the demo before, and I had so much fun with it. But it was like, chaos. Tennis balls are flying everywhere. I didn't even know how to serve or anything like that. And then I played it like literally before, and then I'm like, oh, I know what this like ability does, and it like has like a slow mo. It's like, hey, this is what this is gonna do. Everything hovering over is awesome. The bosses, like you're like building up to each boss of like the third week are sick and like super fun. And then it just seems like you're just having fun with it, which is great because like just the names, like you're getting critters on your arms, you're getting like Cheetos, and you're like trying to max your cheese at for like slow duration. Like, and I think that's one of the things that you do really well, Michael, is your games are like purely you in a lot of ways. Like, just if you look at your art style, your art style is crazy unique. Like, if I see anything like your art style, I know it's you. And I think that's like something that, like, as a game dev, I really respect, is that you have a unique style that you have been like harnessing and channeling and like refining, which is really cool. And then also you just have fun with your games, which is just I really appreciate. And you're like, you don't take the game too seriously, and you're just having a blast with like making like Joe the gym trainer or something like that.
Gym coach. Yeah, gym coach.
Yeah. He kicked my butt, by the way. But, yeah, every one of you guys should play Torso Tennis and see how far you guys make it. Because the thing about that game is, especially the demo, is you start playing it and you're like, I get it. I'm amazing at this. This game's easy. And then you get through like week 1, week 2, week 3, and then all of a sudden you lose, and you're like, "Why did I lose?"
It's very spiky in week 3. So there's an update coming like tomorrow or the day after that's gonna smooth out make it a little easier. I think I overcorrected to make it too hard in the last update, so I'll have to.
I loved it, but that's me.
But the tutorial stuff,
I got put down. I deserve that because I got cocky.
I think the tutorial stuff was the biggest thing for me that I thought, like, I'm like, this is hilarious when people like don't know like what's going on. Because I like poking at games like that. I kind of don't like. I don't even read tutorial stuff when it comes up. Didn't have much of a tutorial in there at all. But I did decide to do some light touch tutorialization, and because people don't always like to hover over in the shop and learn every single thing before they jump into a new round. So it's kind of like you got to slow it down, and when it's something new spawns, tell them what that is.
Yeah, and I think that's like something that's interesting is, especially when you're making a game versus just making something fun, is you start always questioning yourself of like, how much do I start catering to the grand audience, like the general audience, rather than like what's just fun and like goofy and like the niche gamer is gonna like. And then it kind of like, it's like a balancing act. It really is. All right, how do I still hold on to this versus just like hold on to like the core of what this is. Also, let's ease it up, Yeah. Ease up on like the chaoticness of it, and that's a tough thing to do. But I think you're doing a really good job with it with Torso Tennis.
I think MagFest is what made me put in that slow effect to teach each individual mechanic like that, because I just watching people over and over, like there's nothing like a convention to make you realize like, this tutorial needs to be better.
Are the most like eye-opening but also like heartbreaking moments is when you see someone struggling at something, or they struggle with it like once, and you see them have a bad moment with it, and they just walk away from it, and you go, I should change this, shouldn't I? Yeah.
And then you're like up in the hotel room like you're just like so sleep deprived and like exhausted, but you're just trying to fix one little thing in the tutorial so you don't have to explain it every time to the people the next day. But but yeah, so the tutorial's gotten a lot better. I've also done a lot of like looking at negative reviews on other roguelike games and seeing they never complain about the graphics of the game or like whatever. They just want more content. Like they want to be able to play it endlessly. They want more challenges. They want more stuff to unlock. And so it's like, I guess I got to do an unlock menu, even though I was like, I didn't want to do an endless mode. I didn't want to do unlocks. I wanted to not have any roguelite progression. I didn't want meta progression at all. But I kind of was just like, well, people expect this, and this is what people will say negatively about your game is that there's just not enough to do. Even if you have all this,
when
all the
enough people
content,
start asking about it,
yeah. Even if you have all the content that's unlocked from the beginning, if you slowly trickle it out, it feels like there's more there. So I was like, oh, I guess I gotta do this, and I like it now. I'm glad I took the time to do it.
I understand it. The scope and just being like, all right, like if I add this, how much is it going to add? You know,
Yeah.
that happened with me with like the level editor in Lumina Rush, and it was just like, all right, and I don't know how many people are even going to use it, or like, and you probably have the same idea, like how many people are going to play endless mode? Like out of all the percentage of people, how many people are? But it's like, but I kind of feel like the game needs it.
Yeah, I think it's really actually I've been playing around with it. I think it's quite fun. Because I've added a lot of stuff that kind of chains like certain things, like kind of this trigger and response sort of design with the roguelike mechanics, where it'll trigger your arm slots again, which triggers your leg slots, which triggers that. So you start building these like kind of like chains, which is yeah, I'm excited to see people dig into it in the next playtest.
Yeah, and then like kind of jumping off that, how is marketing going? Because I feel like you're in a stage where you're like you have the game, you've refined the game to be pretty good, you got most of the main mechanics on it, and then there's like I like to call it like the other half of game making the game is marketing the game.
Yeah.
How's that been?
I've honestly loved to market and promote games. Like I've loved to learn how to do it,
Really?
and I really have
Respect.
like because you see what aspects of your game are resonating with people and what isn't, and it's really fun to try to solve that puzzle in a certain way. It's like, okay, like what about torso tennis is interesting to people, and how can I lean into that the best way I can, and also not spend the most amount of time or money trying to promote it. And actually, like this actually kind of ties in with some people from Triangle Interactive. Sam, who works on a game called Mech Tech, we both kind of agreed that we're both gonna just like, okay, it's marketing May, baby. Let's make videos every day and post them.
Pump out videos.
So we've been pumping out videos. I mean, I kind of stopped this week because I'm trying to get the update out. But the I was just like low effort, short videos, post across many platforms, and I did start to see some good, like I mentioned earlier, like I've been seeing like more people have been picking up the demo from that, which didn't ever really happen with Forklift Flower Pot. I would make short videos and post them on TikTok, and then I wouldn't really see too much conversion from the platform of TikTok, of scrolling on your phone to going on Steam or wishlisting and downloading the demo. But with Torso Tennis, something in that equation seems to be a little different, or maybe the way that I'm approaching the videos, I don't know. But it's a good sign, and I feel like it's important. So I'm trying to now relate this to people in the audience in the chat here. I think it's important to at least do a little bit of this stuff from a very early stage. Like once your art style is kind of baked in, or even when you're experimenting with art styles, it's like, how do you know which art style looks the best? Well, just record a video of each of them and see which one does the best on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram. And then, try posting a couple more videos of that and see what looks good. And that's a good way of kind of user testing your art styles. Your best TikTok by far was a style test. Memorable. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Nice. That's great.
Think they?
Because I've noticed. Yeah, like the short form content. I've seen you testing out a lot of stuff, and I've been, at least on the YouTube short, I've been seeing every now and then. I'm like, I'll see a YouTube short from you, and I'll be like, oh, nice, and they're doing pretty well, which is sweet.
Yeah. And now, like, I'm very much fixated now on like, okay, like when I post one, am I getting demo plays or am I getting wish lists? And if like, how do I optimize that more? Like I used to do more kind of just like general game dev content, and I realized that's kind of like, I just want to talk about my game like the same way that a streamer might talk about a game that they like, or like a YouTuber's like found a game that they really liked. Like how would they explain, oh, I've got a really crazy run today, or like I've got this really awesome build. Let me show you how this build works. Or like the other thing I try to do more now is like, and this did work for Forklift Flower Pot as well, was like showing the art process. So it's like, here's how I make pre-rendered 3D sprites. Guess how many sprites are in this character in total. Those sorts of things do well. And just kind of showing step by step the process, showing a time lapse of you doing the art, that sort of stuff is cool.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because I feel like I've also kind of dabbled with the YouTube formula, and we can talk about YouTube in general. But finding kind of what I think one of the things that if anyone that does go down both game development and YouTube is trying to figure out where do you put your effort in, and then what you energy from putting your effort in that you like feel like resonates with audiences and feels like will also like what do you want to like accomplish with it, because I really like your perspective on, hey, let's make videos that comes from like a gamer centric point of view of, hey, this is a really cool build that I'm building, making, rather than like I'm going to do the game dev talk on why this game is what it is. Two types of videos I feel like cater to different audiences in different ways, but this one that's like from a gamer point of view, it's like it simply has the concept of, oh, that looks fun, I want to do that as well, or I want to try something cool like that as well. And that caters more towards, you know, wanting to play it or try it out.
I do think there's a common sentiment that like marketing to game devs is bad, or like explaining, like I don't think that's true though, because I think especially with like weird small team indie games, like game devs are probably among the most likely to want to buy and play a kind of like more niche weird title than like your average game player. I don't know, that's just my hunch on it. I don't think we should be dragging people down because they're marketing to other game devs, or they're making YouTube content for game devs, right? So but I do think that like it tends to have a little bit bigger of an audience if you can think of it from that sort of other perspective.
Kind of jumping off of that, because you're doing marketing right now, but you also you live stream, which is, but it's interesting because you don't live stream to market. You live stream just, I feel like for as like a co-working space for other people to virtually hop in and join you, and also to like motivate yourself.
Yeah. Anyone who's worked on a long-term creative project knows it's kind of hard to sit down some days, or it's hard to get into a routine. I found that putting the camera on and sharing my screen and putting timers on is one very reliable way for me to get at least some work done. There is a trade-off, you know, with Twitch. There is a thing called Twitch chat where people will say things to you and distract you. But you kind of like, there's kind of like a, I don't know if it's like this exact saying, but like people cultivate their own communities on the platform. So over time, as I've kind of done all of these streams, they're just kind of chill and focus more on like, hey, I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes and here's what I'm going to try to get done, right in chat what you're doing. People have come that also want to do that kind of thing and engage in that kind of thing and get work done on their own projects. So it's become this kind of good accountability system where sure, maybe I'm the most productive when I'm not streaming, but that's like a dice roll whether I'm going to be productive or not, whether I get to the chair on time, whether I, you know, whatever. But I think with streaming and having a regular streaming schedule, I found that I was at least more consistent about getting some work done. Even if it's not the highest quality, or like, you know, some stuff I can't really do very well on stream, like programming larger systems is kind of hard. Bug fixing, I actually probably find the hardest because I get frustrated, and it's hard for me to like, I don't want to be like negative and just like, and I know people don't hate it,
especially
if I'm
in front of like a live audience.
Yeah, I don't want to be like, oh, I hate this. I can't, you know, I'm like literally like living my dream of being a game developer. Like I don't want to like come across like I'm not extremely excited about that on a daily basis. But yeah, bug fixing is hard to do on stream. I think art is probably my most fun thing to do on stream. It's just breezy. It's fun. People can comment on what what looks good, what doesn't.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like I feel like I'd be slightly nervous because I'd be like, people are gonna judge me so hard, or like people are gonna be like, you're doing this the wrong way, and be like super critical.
90% of the time when I have to tell you, when people try to tell you you should be doing something this way because it's better, and you actually believe them and you start investigating it, it's just like an objectively worse way to do it. It's like you are the only one that knows your project and how things are structured and what the best working, like that's the great thing about like small team and solo game development is like you just make it. It's like it doesn't matter. Like sure, there are more optimal ways, or there's ways to screw yourself over a little less in the long run, but like there's no better way to learn that mistake than by making it. And just yeah, so I don't really listen to people anymore too much when they try to tell me there's a better way of doing whatever enum structure, blah blah blah. I don't know what.
You're like, here comes the programmers telling me everything I did was wrong.
Yeah, because like I didn't learn programming in a traditional way. I learned by just kind of teaching kids. So, but I try not to let that slow me down.
No, and it's like you can make stuff even if it's not like the perfectly most optimized stuff in the world.
I do want to talk about. I know we talked about art style a little bit earlier.
By all means.
I did want to elaborate a little bit on that because I think it's like potentially one of the biggest strengths that indies can have that they don't really lean into very often. I mean, I think the easiest thing to jump into is like pixel art because it's a familiar thing, but but in terms of if you're trying to make a commercial game, I think some of the strongest things you have as a someone who doesn't have a huge budget and a ton of mouths to feed is you could just be weird. You could just be weird as heck, and you should lean into the freakiness or whatever your unique angle is, just 110%, because that's the advantage that you have over other teams. Is like whatever you feel in the depths of your soul, whatever images, whatever games you look at that speak to you. Just one particular way to kind of develop an art style is by keeping like a Pinterest board or like a like a swipe file where you just, if you see something you like, you swipe it and you put it in there, and then you just kind of look at it. And the other kind of thing that I try to think a lot about with art style is like something where I can make one art asset in like under 20 minutes. So with Torso Tennis, it's all like photographs of stuff that are just kind of run through a lot of Photoshop filters. So that makes it very quick to put something in the game. You just cut out the background, apply some filters, put it in the game.
Yeah, and I remember I think I've seen a video that you have of talking about your process of creating the kind of style that you have, which is great. And I love that idea of just making a Pinterest board and just like throwing down stuff that like you're like, oh, I like this. Let's try to make stuff similar to it.
The other thing is like with I think like a kind of archaic step-by-step process, like some weird pipeline is also kind of fun. That if you put it through a lot of steps, or like I use this modeling tool called Quakesels in Unity, which is one of the ways that I do the art style for Forklift Flowerpot and 10D Robot Gardener. So it's kind of like this volumetric 3D, but then at runtime it's like really slows down the game. So I pre-render it and then I make it into sprites. So it's like volumetric 3D in Unity, pre-rendered into sprites, and then rotated and change the sprites depending on what angle you're viewing it at. It just gives this weird effect that you wouldn't really see in many other games. So I think it's a pretty big advantage if you can just come up with some weird, crazy art style like that. It's really gonna kind of hook people and also just be an awesome thing that you've kind of explored and found your own little corner that you can have as a niche.
Yeah, no, and it's as I said before, it's like I see that art style and I'm like, all right, let's see what Michael's cooking up now, because it's like it's got to be you. And if other people are gonna start stealing this, I'm be like, how did they figure out the secret sauce?
I mean, there's some other games that have come out, especially this collage style. It's not as unique maybe as the Forklift Flowerpot style, but I don't know. I do see Janie's question in the chat here. What's my typical week look like in terms of balance between streaming, co-working online versus solitary work time? Do I stick to a particular schedule or vary it based on mood, other factors? It depends. I think like I was in a really good flow for the last couple months of I would stream from home in the morning, then come into the office in the afternoon to kind of co-work with people and just kind of have like less productive time where I was kind of either doing emails or other work or whatever. Sometimes if if I'm not really feeling it, I try to at least hit my stream in the morning, um, and check that off the list and get some work done. But then in the afternoons, I don't really pressure myself to have a super productive afternoon. I could chat with someone, or I could go for a walk with someone, or I could get some work done on Triangle Interactive stuff or other projects. And then it shifts. Like right now, I'm trying to do more of the short videos, so I'm trying to figure out the best time to do that. I would love to be very productive. I would love to always have 8-hour days, and the reality is I shift some of the time onto the weekend. I shift some of the time into where I'm just feeling like working more.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if like you're a person that's like a hard scheduler, like you have everything blocked, or if you're like a person that kind of like goes kind of by the seat of his pants of being like, all right, it's a make a bunch of videos day, or
Yeah.
work on some triangle stuff.
I want to be a hard scheduler. It doesn't come naturally to me, but I do find that I'm like a lot happier when I have a good schedule. Like I feel like in general, like I'm like things are flowing well. So I don't know. Did you have to learn how to make schedules for yourself?
I went through so many things. I went through every single planning free software that I went through. I at one point did an Excel spreadsheet where I was like, every day I'm gonna like write down what I worked on and then how many hours I worked on. I'm gonna see a beautiful graph of I worked this many hours on like YouTube and I worked this many hours. I'm gonna have these cool graphs going. It's not how I operate.
Yeah, it's a good exercise though. I recommend that to a lot of people.
100% is, and you will feel motivated, and you'll be able to look back at it and be like, oh, I have done stuff this month. Like I have, and I have the proof in these numbers right here, which is great. But I'm very much a person that's like a week by week kind of person, unless I have like big events, whether that's events or stuff like that, where I'm like, all right, this milestone I need to hit. I want to get comfortable before, at least like a week before, where I'm feeling like good for that. But besides that, it's like, all right, what's our like big ticket items that we need to like check, like that are immediate we need to tackle, and then like what do we just want to like dabble in. And that's kind of how I did Lumina Rush, and there was a lot of pros to things, and I learned a lot about myself with like, all right, maybe I can't schedule every second of my time, but having a general idea is helpful rather than being like, I'm gonna release the game when.
There needs to be some kind of system in place, and the nature of making a system that works for you, or trying to improve your system is the process, right? So there's no one right way to do it. I do love the hour tracking though. I was religiously doing that from about 2021 to this year. Yeah, it does. I think the streaming helped with that too, because I knew like exactly how much time I was working and how much time I was chatting on the stream. So I would just enter the working time as my time, and then it was hard to really keep up with it, but I did find like that, like if you have especially if you have like 4 hours is my goal for the day. Like if I have 4 focused hours, like I feel like if I can check that off at the end of the day, like I feel pretty good. And that would actually really help me both to be motivated to get that 4 hours done and work hard during it, and then also like after work I wasn't feeling like I couldn't let it go. I was like, oh, now I can fully indulge in my life and my free time because I have checked off the box for the day of the number of hours. And hours are a lot more reliable than milestones, I think, for this sort of thing. Like if you're saying I'm gonna make the game bug free by 6 p.m., it's like what does that mean? Like how much, like you can never know how much time tasks are going to take. You can really guess, and you can get better.
Task is just going to stay there for the longest period of time on the like ongoing, and you're just going to be like, I hate this task.
Yeah, you can
I've designated this many times.
Yeah, you can like guess and you can get better at guessing how long things are going to take, but an hour count will always be achievable regardless. So that's really, really handy to set timers like Noah was saying. And that is your unit of work.
And that kind of goes into just the concept of like sustainability when working on a game, especially when you're like finishing, like you're creating a game, because it's really easy to get burned out, especially from going from a game jam and you have all this inspiration, all this like passion, and then you're like, all right, we need to like keep this up, and just figuring out what works best for you.
Yeah, I like coming up with systems probably too much. Sometimes I have to like step away from that and like just do the work. Any hints for growing your
Yeah.
stream? Oh, that's a good one. I might not be the best person to
Oh,
ask about this, but I think like being very consistent about the time that you go live is important. I think networking with other streamers is important. Do you know Foolbox? You should talk to Foolbox about this. Foolbox is a cool streamer that is always he's like he does like projects in Godot. He's worked on puzzle games before. He is like always jumping into other people's streams and saying hi and like genuinely checks in with what you're up to. And like I basically am talking about him a lot because of that, or like, oh, you should check out his stream because of that. How do I decide on pricing? That's a really big question.
pricing. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Pricing.
I look at comps basically. It doesn't matter what I think the game is worth.
Yeah.
I look at the genre and I think, okay, what are other games in this genre selling point? What are the big expectations? So for micro roguelikes like Torso Tennis, $5 is like the standard, which is frustrating to me because I feel like I could push it a little higher. But I'm gonna get compared to Brotato. I'm gonna get compared to Vampire Survivors. I'm gonna get compared to like other free games basically, and there's just really nothing you can do about that. If you have an exceedingly amazing game, you can kind of get away with maybe pricing a little higher. And then if you have an existing audience, you can also get away with pricing a little higher. But if you don't have either of those things, you kind of have to stick to what the genre is the standard of it is.
Yeah, what the genre is, what you'll be compared to. Yeah, and it's like it's frustrating because you understand how much time and effort and money you put in, and then you're like, all right, this should equate to this amount, hopefully, in like your brain. But then it's just like, no, this is the gamers have decided this is the price point, and you just have to kind of fit in there. And that's honestly really important when developing a game, because then like, all right, if this is going to be a $5 game, how long should I develop this game, or how much energy and time and money and resources should I put in this game? It's one of those things that you learn and you're like, oh, you learn when you start pricing your game.
Yeah. By the way, Torso Tennis is going to be more than $5. I haven't decided how much more though. I'm breaking genre conventions. I think it's worth at least $1 more than the genre convention, maybe. I will talk about Steam Next Fest a little bit. Definitely.
Oh, that's a good one.
Definitely wait till your demo is a little more battle tested before Steam Next Fest. I had my demo out for maybe like a month before Steam Next Fest, and it just wasn't battle tested. It had a lot of bugs in it. So it did start to kind of get picked up from some streamers and some YouTubers, but there was a bug that just stopped the game like right in the middle of a run. And like for a game like this to have a bug like that, it's just like you're gonna stop the stream right there and move on to the next game, especially in these demo showcases. So if your game is really fun and your demo has a lot of content, like I'm putting this endless mode into the demo partially because of this. That if a streamer's enjoying themselves, they should basically be able to play your game for as long as they want, and still have stuff to dig into, because that's how you can kind of get more eyes on your game during Steam Next Fest, is if it gets covered. So yeah, having the demo be really ready and just basically have your game ready to launch, I think, after it. And that's the common wisdom. And I think I wanted to launch, but I came in a little hot on it, and it still wasn't bad. It still is a great festival to be a part of, regardless of whether your demo's ready or not. And you can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you do it with Lumina Rush? You did, right?
I did. I did do it with Lumina Rush. I did it. I think I did it September.
Okay.
Before. Yeah. My goal was hit Steam Next Fest, do a little bit more marketing, and then release. And I had like decent time with it. I think Steam transitioned from a focus on the developer live streaming, like gameplay, to like trailers, and I think that kind of punished me a little bit because I didn't have a like super flashy trailer, and I was really more focused on like oh, if it was like my gameplay, I feel like then it would be pretty decent because I could pull off some really cool tricks, or like do stuff like that. So I feel like the discoverability was a little bit lower, but it was still totally worthwhile because you get people to check it out, you get a bunch of people playtesting your game early on. But there's a lot of people that play. Like that's a for Steam Next Fest. It's a lot. You're duking it out with a lot of other games, and that number is only growing. So, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah, and like any other festival you can try to get into is always worth it. Whether they get featuring on the Steam front page or not. That's one of the big things that you basically is zero effort marketing. If it's in your genre or it's something that fits your game, apply to them. If you're not already following our Lord and Savior Chris Zukowski, whatever he writes on the internet is the gospel of indie game dev marketing.
The game dev, how to market a game.com,
Yeah.
genius.
Recommend just reading that blog top to bottom. Yeah, but I have
it was helpful for me at least. Yeah,
and then I have found kind of using that as the basics, and then deciding for myself like I've decided no more long YouTube videos. I just can't. I always get too into it, and then like the editing takes so long, and then like the videos don't do well, and it's so soul crushing. So like to me, if I make an hour, I spend an hour on editing a short video, and it bombs, like I'm okay with that. That's easy for me. Emotionally I can recover from it. Time wise, I've got the time for it. The impact is pretty good, so that's I've kind of defined my boundaries now for what I'm willing to do for promotion of the game, and that's been very helpful.
That's great because I had the dream of making a YouTube video in like a full-on YouTube video in like 4 hours. That was my dream, and every time I went to go edit it, like record, edit, and do it, it would take me like a day and a half every time, and I was like I love it, especially when I'm inspired by a good topic, but it's not sustainable for being like, all right, like consistency is king, and just being able to be like, all right, we're just pumping something out, especially when you're promoting a game.
Video editing is so fun. I don't know if you like it. Like I will sit there for hours,
I do enjoy it.
And then like my mouth goes dry, and like I'm like I'm sweaty, and like I don't like it's weird. Like I get very, very into it.
I get focused with like the music, like lining up with like like emotional beats and stuff like that, and like I'm just like, oh yes, and it's like it is fun, but it's just like I'm like, oh, 8 hours have passed. I was supposed to work on my game. What have I done?
Yeah.
Is there a part of the game dev process, because it seems like you do everything? Do you do the sounds and like music of Torso Tennis? So you pretty much do everything for Torso Tennis. Would there be anything that you would have like offloaded to someone else, or is it like you're like, this is my baby, I really love?
Yeah, I don't know. Like
every component of it.
Sometimes I say I would like to offload the programming, but then I realize that requires communication. I just I like
that's fair.
I like developing by myself quite a bit, selfishly.
You can do whatever you
yeah. I like not having other mouths to feed. Zero budget games. Like I like games like this out in the world, so it's the kind of game I want to make too. So Nomable says, I'd love to do more YouTube, but it's so time consuming. I feel like you got to make it the focus over game dev to make it work. Well, yeah, or have some kind of schedule where you do 3 weeks of dev, 1 week of YouTube or something. I don't know.
And it can be so soul crushing where you pump in like, a week's worth of time into a video and it gets like 50 views. And YouTube's one of those things where it's like 90% like title and thumbnail and then like 20% content, which I feel like it should be the other way around, but it's not the world we live in. I play the YouTube game, which is annoying.
That's why TikTok is awesome. You don't have to worry about the thumbnail or title or whatever. You do have to have
they'll just see it.
Yeah, the first 2 seconds is essentially your title and thumbnail, but I feel like it's a lot easier than having to like manipulate the Photoshop of the thumbnail and whatever and make it perfect. Have the perfect expression on your face.
The jaw. What? One of those things. Oh my gosh, ridiculous. Do you have anything you want to bring up besides this?
I talked a lot about myself, so I think the people.
Oh, you did a lot of talking.
The
A lot of talking. A lot of great talking.
Cool.
And this is mostly for me. Like this is the audience members. This is mostly. I made this event mostly for me to just grill you in here because I was always curious about like what you do, how you do it.
Thank you.
Where can we find him? Boom. All right, I got you guys. Too Much Tomato website, which is a great website. You can go to his Steam games. You can go to his streaming. You can go to his awesome blog, which I was reading today about.
You can find it all there on the website. Yeah, and feel free to ask me any questions.